For those just entering, if you could please come sit down in this lower section, we would greatly appreciate that. What else? Should I tell some jokes? Hello. Hi, everybody. For those coming in, do you mind coming all the way down and filling in this front section? We really want all these chairs full, and there's a bunch on this side in particular. Thank you. All right, everybody, if you could please take your seats. We're going to start the program in 1 minute. Thank you.
In the meantime, you can still talk to each other. That got a little weird, so.
Okay, are we ready to go? I feel like, we've been doing this for 10 years, and I need to get a theme song and like one of those smoke generators or something and come running out of the side door. So sometime in the near future, maybe our 20th anniversary, we'll do that. So welcome everybody to Connext 2026. Applause. Thank you all so much for coming. It seems like every single year there is something we think will get in the way of pulling this off. Global pandemic, financial crises, geopolitics, war, yet you all still make an effort to be here, and we really appreciate it, so thank you for coming. I'm just going to spend a few minutes before introducing Yav, who's going to be our first speaker this morning, just reviewing where we are, what we have going on at HBS Online, and then we'll start, hopefully, what will be a fun and exciting and educational day. So, let's see if this works. Sometimes this doesn't work for me, and James, I always tell him, James, it never works, and he says it's operator error, so apparently I've learned how to use it. So, look at all we've done over the last decade. We were called HBX when we started, before we changed our name to Harvard Business School Online. Who took a course while it was called HBX, by the way? Oh, actually, quite a bit, yes. If you have the old HBS swag, I think it's probably worth millions of dollars. So, I'm just saying. We had 2 programs, and now have 36. Burden Hall is on the left. That's where our first event was. And Burden Hall, if you step out of Klarman and just walk like a few meters straight ahead, you'll be standing on top of where Burden Hall was. And when I say on top, I literally mean on top. It was a subterranean theater, which is not a great design. It was very dark. There was no natural light. When I was an MBA student here, though, it was kind of a cool place because in my 2 years here, I saw Warren Buffett on that stage, Jeff Bezos, what's his name? Tony Robbins. That was a little more of a weird one. Anybody know who Tony Robbins is? Okay, so I'll tell you a quick story about that. Tony Robbins is, for those who don't know, is like an energetic, motivational speaker. And he's really big. He's a mammoth man. And he's doing his thing. He's running around the stage. He's getting us all excited. I'm standing next to a classmate of mine from Switzerland, who's also a big man with a very thick Swiss accent. And at one point, Tony Robbins, for some reason, tells us to turn to the person next to us and give them a hug. And I turned to Adrian, my classmate, and went like this. And he has this very Arnold Schwarzenegger-like accent, even though he's from Switzerland. He says, "Patrick, I am not going to hug you." So I did not get a hug that day in Burden Hall. There we go. All right, our selfies. So the guy on the left is still me. How many years younger? Let's see, almost 10 years younger, yeah. By the way, let me ask really quickly. Let's do it this way. Who has been to, just raise your hand, 3 or more Connext? A pretty good number. 5 or more. How much higher do you think we can go? 7 or more? No fibbing. Oh, we have a few up here. Anybody been here all 10? Yes? Who is that? Stand up. Yes. Oh, wait, we got another? Oh, we got another. So just 2 of you, huh? All right. I'd like to say I had a prize for you, but I don't. You just get the adulation of your peers for being here, so thank you. All right, so we're going to continue the tradition, and we're going to do a selfie. All 3 sections. You have to be energetic during this. Let me ask, Lauren, would you prefer these up and down or long ways? Up and down, okay. All right, we'll go over here. Actually, we'll go over here first. I always start on this side. This is a little more thinly populated, so you all are going to have to like let your emotions show through the screen here. Are you ready? All right, 1, 2, 3. Let's try that one more time. I wasn't feeling it. All right, 1, 2, 3. All right, a lot better. All right, now you all have numbers, so it's not fair. Don't embarrass them too much, but I know you'll be loud. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Okay, and over here, the third. 1, 2, 3. Awesome. It's really interesting. Everybody does you. Why you, not ya? Awesome. All right. So please, I'll say this in a minute, but please make sure you take some photos today. We'll get this posted on social media so you all can have a copy of it. All right, let's talk about what's happening today with respect to our numbers. 420 attendees. Oh, I just noted it's getting transcribed up there. 52 countries. I say this every year. We have all 7 continents save one in Antarctica. Somebody has to know somebody who is a research scientist that needs something to do during the winters in Antarctica in that little research station they have. If you know somebody who's doing that, please have them contact us so they can take a course, we can educate them on what we do, and we can cover all the continents. Congratulations to our 4 participants listed there who have taken a number of our courses with us. Richard Pitts always gets mad because we count cores, 1 course, not 3. But suffice it to say, where's Richard? I didn't see him this morning. There you are, in the last row. Wow. Well, maybe if you were further down here, we would have given you credit for the 3. So thank you, everybody, Rich, Eva, Richard, John, and Donnie. Really appreciate your dedication to HBS Online. Okay, so we talk about our mission a lot here. The mission of Harvard Business School is to educate leaders who make a difference in the world. And we add to that wherever they are, because the obvious reason is that you're not necessarily on campus. But it does mean more than that. It means wherever you are in your career, wherever you are in your life stage. So it's a great opportunity for us to reach people we otherwise would not be able to. I should mention that when HBX was started, part of the reason it was called HBX is because there was a lot of uncertainty about how online education might affect the brand of Harvard Business School, just to be blunt, right? And so there was a little bit of distancing by only putting the HB in HBS in the name of the organization. And my hypothesis always had been, and certainly it was of some of our early founders on the faculty here, was that as long as we do things with excellence in the way that Harvard Business School does them on campus, not only can we succeed in doing online education, but it would actually be immoral. I know some of you have heard me say this before, but if you believe that what you have makes the world a better place, and I think certainly leadership and capitalism done well is good for the world. It's lifted tens of millions of people out of poverty around the world. And we think we can help people be better at that. We should try and reach more people. And you all are a living testament to the fact that that did work. At least I think it did. So give yourselves a hand. Really appreciate it. So let's talk about some of the new stuff we've got going on. Personal branding course with Jill Avery, and then AI for leaders and data science. Yav is sitting right over here. That's a very handsome picture, Yav. And Kareem Lakhani. And then on the right, we have a new digital transformation AI learning track as well. AI, you won't be surprised, has been a hot topic everywhere, and we're ramping up more and more content every day in this space. Not just at HBS Online, but across HBS. By the way, I forgot to mention, speaking of which, Mila, I'm going to embarrass you. Well, I'm not going to embarrass you. I'm just going to call you out. This is Mila in the yellow right here. She actually works for executive education, but she also took one of our courses. I have responsibility for the executive education group as well, which is our on-campus programming. And so first of all, thank you for coming out. Not that we've ever had an employee attend Connext as a participant in Connext. And this is the part where you get mad at me. But if you have any questions about executive education, you can talk to Mila. We actually will have a table upstairs during one of our breaks where you can talk to people about our in-person executive education activities as well. Course updates and enhancements. We have our Credential and Digital Innovation Strategy Certificate, a 6-month credential program. Our Disruptive Strategy course, which was originally made by Clay Christensen, is being updated by Willie Shee, a new faculty member. Not a new faculty member, but a new faculty member doing the course. And then Negotiations Mastery, we have new course content, business experts, and AI-powered simulations. So we're trying to make sure we're keeping the content fresh, especially for courses that have done so well for a long time. Disruptive strategy, a lot of people argue, was our very first course. Core was around the same time, but Clay Christensen, who passed away, I know, probably 7 years ago or so, made that course. And those of you who have taken it know what a powerful course it is. It really is awesome. We also are growing our on-demand portfolio. For some of you may not even know what I'm referring to here, but for a long time, HBS Online courses were cohort-based courses. You joined a group, you started on a date, you ended on a date with milestones in the middle. Many of you have experienced our courses that way. We started transitioning to the option of on-demand, recognizing that a lot of people wanted even more flexibility in not having to start and end on specific dates with a cohort. So we've got on-demand courses now which allow you to move through the material with more freedom than you could before. So let's get to today. Tips to navigate the day. First of all is share. I mentioned the social media stuff. Share stuff on social media with that tag. Hashtag Connections. Don't forget the X in there. Make sure you visit the Coop. I think a lot of you did yesterday. It's one of their best sales days when you all are on campus. Make sure you spend some time between 1 and 2 o'clock at a dedicated networking hour. This is something that I always find at almost every kind of conference sort of event I go to. You wish there was a little more time to interact with people. I mean, the programming is great. So we're trying to listen there and get you some more time to spend with your peers here. Explore our online community by engaging with our community organizers. You'll hear more about our communities if you don't know much about them throughout the day. Meet somebody new. It's not hard to do. I think I've met 20 new people today, and 20 of you I thought were new, but you reminded me we met last year, so I apologize for that. It's hard to keep track. I'm only seeing everybody once a year. And then say hi to our staff. They're in the purple shirts. By the way, most years I wear the shirt and jeans. I figured that since it was our 10-year anniversary, I would dress up this time. So don't take it to mean, in fact, people were upset with me apparently because I heard that Lauren told me that people took this as a sign in previous years that we can wear jeans on Friday, which is fine. But I didn't do it yesterday. But to my staff, it's okay, you can wear jeans. Nobody's getting in trouble. And then on the right, that is a QR code for a virtual photo booth you can use to take photos. When you share things on social media, you have the opportunity to win some swag from us, including one of those aforementioned t-shirts. Does anybody stand Mary for a moment to model our t-shirt? Very nice, very nice. And what was the name? Was it Purple Storm? Was that the name of the color? I'm trying to remember. Somebody said when we ordered them, I think it's Purple Storm, which I kind of like that. Okay, I think that's all I have before I introduce Yav. So thank you very much again for making the time to be here. I think it's going to be a great day. Looking forward to meeting more of you as the day progresses. And now I'm going to pull out of here my nifty note card, which I made at 6 a.m. this morning. So I had Yav's bio here so I can introduce him properly to you. So forgive me for reading. So Yav Bojinov, I got it right? I've always known him as Yav, as an assistant professor of business administration here at HBS. Oh, you got promoted. Okay. Associate professor of business administration. He's the co-principal investigator of the Data Science and AI Operations Lab at Harvard's Digital Data and Design Institute, which is not called that anymore. It's called... They what used to generate this? Yeah. I don't know where it came from. I copied it from something Lauren gave me. What are you doing? So the Design, Digital, and Data Institute, we affectionately would call D cubed. It's actually been renamed recently to the Harvard Business School AI Institute. I think I have that right. So if you see that moniker around, you'll know what it refers to. And he's a faculty affiliate in the Department of Statistics and the Harvard Data Science Initiative. I have a math degree of, so maybe we can talk sometime, although you'll be doing all the talking because I remember none of it. He co-leads the HBS Online course for AI for leaders in data science and AI for decision making. His research focuses on data science operations, examining how companies can address the challenges that arise from novel applications of data science. So please join me in welcoming Yav.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, definitely need this. Okay, hello everyone. So this is my first time here, so I'm so excited to be with you all. just out of curiosity, who's taken one of the 2 AI courses? Wow, thank you all. Because of you, I believe this became the fastest growing HBSO course that we've had. So thank you all for being a part of that. So today what I'm going to talk a little bit about is generative AI, the landscape we're in, talk a little bit about the growing gap, which maybe some of you have seen because we use it in one of our courses, and then I'll talk a little bit about how to close it. The first part of this will cover some concepts that were discussed in the first course, but the second part of this is actually going to introduce some new things which are part of a new course we're working on basically agentic operating models, which we will launch at some point. It's September, August. Okay, so stay tuned. So you get a little bit of a preview of some of the cases and things that are going to go into it. Okay, so let me get started. So every time you open the news, there's so much hype around AI, and there's a number of reasons for that. One is there's just a lot of AI products being shipped everywhere, so there's a huge supply side shock where everything is now AI, everyone's trying to integrate it. And at the same time, there's a lot of demand where there's lots of people who are now starting to use this technology and started to integrate it, so there's both a demand and a supply shock. But if you sort of scratch behind the hype, there's basically 4 things that are driving the excitement. The first one is, and this is what got me really excited a few years ago, is generative AI essentially expanded the types of problems that could be thought of as AI problems. 5 years ago, everything that you could use AI for was basically quantitative tasks. So you could use it for forecasting demand, you could use it for predicting customer churn, but you couldn't really use AI to summarize an email. But that all changed when we had ChatGPT come out. And so suddenly all of these problems that were previously not AI problems became AI problems. So we just expanded the scope and place where you could use AI. That's the first thing. The second thing, and this is one of my favorite figures, it's decades old in terms of AI time. It's 3 years old. And it basically shows ChatGPT 3.5 and ChatGPT 4, the things that came out in 2022 and 2023, how they're able to pass things like the AP Psychology, the bar exam, LSAT exam, at a rate that is almost as good as people. Now, I don't show you any of the new models here because everything gets 100%, so it's no longer interesting. But the reason why this was really exciting was in the past, every single time you wanted to use AI, you essentially had to build a bespoke model for that problem. But here we have this one model that could suddenly do all sorts of things. Now, no one told you what to use it for, but again, this was a huge opportunity because it changed the name of the game. You no longer had to build as quickly as you could. You had to figure out how to use this. That's the second thing that happened. The third thing is the sheer amount of investment that is going into AI right now. And this is both in terms of the infrastructure. This is sort of spending across the 5 biggest companies in the space. This excludes OpenAI, et cetera, because they don't have public data on this. But you can see how we're seeing this massive growth of investment, and this is going to cover both research as well as data centers, et cetera. And so the total amount of compute we have is also going up. The fourth thing, and this is the one I'm going to dig into a little bit, is these models have basically grown at an exponential rate. And to just zoom in on this, this is one of my favorite websites. It's called Artificial Analysis. They basically go and measure the intelligence of these models. How do they do that? Think of them as basically they're an exam school. So when the new model comes out, they put it through a barrage of exams, and they see how it performs. You can just go on the website. All of this data is publicly available. And here, if you squint at this, what you see is that these models are basically getting exponentially better. I did a calculation, so I was teaching my MBA course, Data Science and AI for Leaders, which is a required course for all of our MBA students. It started at the end of January. We finished 2 weeks, well, last week. Yeah, 2 weeks ago. And I did a calculation in terms of the frontier models. And across that period of time, if you looked at the average improvement week over week, there was basically a 2% compounding improvement in terms of the models every single week. So every single week, these models were getting about 2% smarter than they were the previous week, and that's compounding. Now, all of us are terrible at thinking in an exponential way. We all sort of think linearly. The world is kind of linear around us. And so I wanted to give you a way to just visualize what exponential actually looks like, okay? And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to show you some videos. So the first one is a video that I generated using Plasmapunk, which is technology from sort of 2023. The song I generated using Udio, which is sort of newer, so the song is kind of good. But I want you to look at the video. So let me play this for you, and then I want you to focus on what you think of the video quality.
Ain't about AI, it ain't about progress. Automate them tasks, speed up that process. Innovation spreading, data-driven session got the world transforming. AI's the lesson. Project selection, pick your aim, start your vision. Development stage, bring ideas to fruition. Evaluation phase, test the edge, find precision.
Okay, what do we think? Is this video good or? It's okay. It's not amazing. I wouldn't, like you look at this, it's just a bunch of images kind of morphing into each other. Sure, the morphing is kind of smooth, but you're not going to look at this and be like, oh, this was on MTV, right? Does MTV still exist? I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe it's on YouTube. There we go. So it's not that good. Okay, so let me fast forward to February 2024. Who's seen this video? This is from OpenAI Sora 1 model. It came out in February 20. I see some nodding heads. So this is just a few months after the technology that I showed you. Now, it's quite impressive. If this is, I assume many of you have seen this video by now, but I just wanted to show you sort of the progress. What's impressive about it for me is you can see the details when you sort of zoom in. You see even the reflection in the sunglasses is actually capturing what's on the other side of the street. Now, at the time when this first came out, you couldn't actually generate sound. It was just able to generate these videos. But if we fast forward to August, I'm going to use this tool that basically takes an image and makes it sing. So shall we make her sing? All right.
Did a full 180, crazy, thinking about the way I was. Did the heartbreak change me? Maybe, but look at where I
It's not bad. That's probably better lip singing than I can do.
I'm all good already, so moved on, it's scary. I'm not where you left me at all. So, if you don't wanna see me dancing with somebody,
Yeah. Like, I love the emotion and the eyebrows, right? It's like, yeah. All right.
don't show up, don't come out.
I'll keep going. This keeps going for a little bit too long. So let me fast forward to November. And now we've got a technology. So remember, we started less than a year ago when we could just morph some images. We couldn't generate any sound. In February, we could generate videos that were much better, but no sound. Now we're going to generate some videos and sound together. So let me play that for you.
And stop. Rush again.
I love the hardcore rock music he's listening to on this peaceful. This is all AI generated, by the way. There's no real people here, right?
Order up for Frank.
When you're ready, gently open your eyes, returning to your surroundings, now carrying this light.
What do we think? That's better, right? Okay, let me fast forward a little bit more. So at the time, the challenge was that you could only generate short videos. And so if we fast forward a few more months, and this is to September 2025, this is AI generated. Let me play this.
Ready when
This
you
is
are.
Sora 2.
3, 2, 1, go! Dude.
Like you
You
could
all right?
feel that. The reason why I love this video is because water movement is actually extremely difficult for these models because they don't understand physics. They're just sort of trying to predict the pixels and generate them, but you can see how it captures it. Now, this is just AI with a single prompt, no human editing. But if we take this and actually get a person to take these videos and actually have some experience in editing, you can actually produce something even better. So let me play you this.
For too long, greatness has been defined by the grind, the relentless pursuit, pain, is power. Struggle is strength. Play has no place in sport. But at Puma, we've always done things differently, championing the fearless few who show up exactly as they are. Unapologetically authentic, joyful pioneers. Those who know that greatness is measured by the courage to play your own way. Your story makes you strong. Your journey is yours to define. Move the world like only you can, because greatness is in your nature.
All right. So this is 100% generated by AI, and they posted it online. You can sort of view it if you search for it. This, in the past, would have taken a camera crew, a bunch of people figuring out what to film, etc. It would have taken, say, 6 months to create. This took under 2 weeks of just prompting, putting everything together. So none of these people were real. All of these videos were generated using AI. And so when I show you this graph, this is what I want you to have in the back of your mind. It's every 6 months, we're going from a bunch of images morphing into each other into something that looks as good as what people are doing. And when you actually layer on some human intelligence, you end up with something that is just absolutely phenomenal. Now, you might be wondering, how does this keep accelerating? Well, it turns out that we're not just trying to improve these models, we're actually coming up with different architectures. So in the early days, and early days I mean like 3 years ago, decades ago, at the dawn of time, 3 years ago, we had these large language models. They were basically designed to do next word predictions. They were just doing pattern recognition. About 15 months ago, actually less than 15 months ago, this notion of reasoning models came out that could actually think before they spoke. If you remember, in the past, every time you would ask something to ChatGPT, it would just give you an answer, and then suddenly it started doing this thinking, right? It would sit there, it would think, it would wait, and then eventually it will give you an answer. So that's sort of the second wave that we've seen, and that has been really the last 12 months. And we're now, and this is what I'm going to talk a little bit about, we're now entering a third wave, which is really agentic AI, which is going beyond reasoning and giving these reasoning models the capabilities to actually act, to interact, to perceive, to plan, and to actually execute things on our behalf. And so just zooming in, right, large language models, they basically do next word prediction, examples, things like ChatGPT 4.0. So if you have a sentence like the boy went to the model would basically have a distribution, would have a distribution across different words, and then they would sample one of those words, like the boy went to the park. That's how large language models work. Reasoning models do things a little bit differently. They use this notion known as chain of thought. And the idea was really simple. It came out of this paper, which basically said, if I ask the model to just think a little bit about it and do a thinking before acting, then it could actually do a much better job. And that's exactly what they implemented. The first example was 01, which came out in December 2024. And intuitively, this makes sense why this is better, because if I asked you, hey, go write me an essay, you're not going to just open up your laptop and start typing, right? You're going to say, okay, I need to write an essay. Let me think of the outline. Let me go and do a little bit of research. Let me populate some bits. Let me write it. Then let me go back, review it, edit it. And then that's my final thing. And that's what reasoning models do. They basically are able to take down complex tasks, break them down into subtasks, and then execute each of those tasks independently. If I come back to this picture here, reasoning models basically came out right around January 2025. And you can see there is a step change, right? You can literally see the step change the reasoning models gave sort of the overall intelligence. I should have said, the higher the score, the more intelligent the models. What's interesting about these guys is that every sort of 9 months, whatever score they have hits 100, and they have to redefine it and bring it back down. So every sort of 6 to 9 months, intelligence hits 100, and they go back down to like 30, and then they work their way up. And by the way, if you look at right now, today, but this all started right 12 months ago, today, every single frontier model is a reasoning model. So there are no longer just plain large language models. Everything that you use has that thinking step. Some models spend a little bit less time thinking than others, but they're all reasoning. There's no longer any frontier models that are not using this reasoning capabilities. Now, agents represent an even bigger step change. So agents, the way to think about it is like large language models are the brain, and then agents give it the hands, so it can go out and actually act. And these things, unlike large language models and reasoning models, they don't need to just be activated through a prompt where you type. They could be triggered by an event, or they could be time-based, etc. They have persistent memory, so they can actually remember what they've done in the past, so they can learn. And then they can go and take action. They can write code, they can execute, they can connect through APIs, they can go and search the internet, etc. So they can basically do what anyone else can do using a digital computer. The most famous example right now is OpenClaw. I'm sure many of you have heard OpenClaw, OpenClaw. This is just an example of an agentic architecture that anyone can download. NVIDIA made a huge pivot, I think about a month and a half ago, where they launched NemoClaw, which is sort of the enterprise version of this agentic system. Now, what I find interesting about this is to actually look at how do agents and large language models, how do they change sort of the process of work? And so here I have just one really simple example of software engineering. Software engineering is a great example because these guys are a little bit ahead of the curve, but this is essentially what's happening everywhere else in our economy. So if you look, traditional software engineer, traditional developer, the way they would work is, right, they would set up their goal, they would write code, they would write nuanced code, they would go to the internet like Stack Overflow, they would come up with unit tests, they would review it, etc., they would deploy it. So it was a very linear and long process. And if you ever, do we have any software engineers here? Okay, so many of you have lived this, right? This is not, it doesn't take 2 minutes to just write a piece of software. It can take months, years to actually write a very sophisticated piece of software. Now, when large language models came out, some of the work could be delegated to these models. So they could actually start to complete some of the code for you. They can write specific functions for you. But you still, the software engineer, still ended up having to write a lot of the nuanced code. They still were in charge of executing, testing, and making sure everything works. So that's what the flow looks like when you had just large language models and co-pilots helping you. With agents, it's quite different. The software engineer or the developer basically describes the goal of what they want to achieve, and then the agent goes out and does all of the work, and then the developer sort of reviews the outcome and makes sure that this is what they were hoping for, and then goes out and ships it. And you can see how this massively compresses the amount of time it takes to develop software engineering. And this is already, most tech companies already operate like this. A lot of traditional organizations, their software engineers have started to pivot into this direction. And this is, it's only a matter of time before most other organizational functions start to work in this way. I'll give you some examples of that in a little bit. So coming back to my favorite picture, agents are likely to essentially accelerate this curve even further. And so what I want you to take away is these models are essentially the worst they will ever be. So every single time you use AI, today it is the worst it will ever be. Okay, so tomorrow will be a little bit better. The day after that, it will be a little bit better. 6 months after that, it will be much better. And so if you tried something 6 months or 9 months or a year ago, and you're like, oh, this didn't work, you need to come back to it because the capabilities have basically doubled or tripled or quadrupled in that short period of time. However, they're already showing signs of the transformative nature of this technology. And I won't spend too much time on research, but I'll just share, and we've done a lot of research on this, by the way. The AI Institute, we've been just writing a ton of research on the impact of AI. And not just ours, but also folks at Stanford, Columbia, et cetera, are all working on really understanding the implications for work. I'll just sort of share three high-level facts here. The first one is we have an abundance of evidence that show that AI increases both the productivity of workers, but also the quality of work. And so essentially it takes people, there's no longer terrible people at work. Everyone gets shifted to the baseline of the model, and the baseline of the model is actually really, really good. So individuals get faster, they get smarter, and the same is actually true for teams. Teams with AI are actually much faster and can produce better ideas. And also, they actually have much better communication, especially if it's cross-functional. Because if you have a software engineer speaking to a product person, they sometimes speak a different language, and AI can sort of help translate that for them. So that's sort of the first thing. The third thing I wanted to mention, though, is, and this is why what all of you are so important, is there's this gap between ideation and execution, which is AI is really good with coming up with ideas, but it oftentimes struggles to actually execute on it. And we actually ran a large-scale experiment on this, and what we found was what we called the Gen AI wall, which is the point at which you can't really expand your work capabilities anymore and still do a good job. The intuition here is domain knowledge is really, really crucial. And so if you don't have the necessary domain knowledge and you're using AI, you're basically performing at the baseline. You're just copy-pasting from AI. You don't know how to actually make it better, right? But if you have the expertise and you know what you're doing, when you use AI, then you can actually make magic, like that Puma commercial I showed you earlier. So this is what the research has shown. But the reality is, when you go out and you look at the impact on organizations, this is a study from Microsoft that basically looked at what's the impact of Copilot. And there was a lot of variation across organizations, but they basically found people spend slightly less time on email, they spend more time on meetings, and they created and edited slightly more documents, which to me doesn't sound very revolutionary. And if you sort of keep digging at this, you realize, and this is a report from MIT, there's lots of companies investigating AI, lots of companies piloting, but very little successful implementation. And if you combine those two facts, then what you get is what we call the growing gap, which is these frontier models are getting exponentially better, but organizations are only able to adopt these capabilities at a linear rate. And so there's a gap that is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And this is creating an existential crisis for most organizations. And if you don't feel it, you probably should feel it, because there's two things that live here. One is your competition, which is if your competitors figure out how to be closer to that curve, then you just will not be able to produce the same quality as they will at the same cost. And so you're going to start to lose out. And the second thing is there's a number of startups that are looking at your businesses going, yeah, we can take them. Because we can architect ourselves in a completely different way, and we can be at the top leveraging these models to their full potential. And so that raises a question, which is like, how do you actually close this gap? Right? How do you actually close this gap? Let me talk a little bit about a case study. So this is going to be part of the new course. This is going to entice you to all take our new course, which we're promising will be out in September. But this is a case, and this is one of my favorite cases that I've written. This is a case on Microsoft on the sales organization. And the case essentially follows what happens when they deploy Copilot internally to the people who sell you Copilot. Right? I'm sure many of you have been on calls with sales professionals. Let's have a look at how they did when they were given Copilot. Not so good. So this is the initial deployment. So there's a lot of excitement. And you can see this, they launched in sort of July 2023. They started getting lots of excitement. They got up to about 25% daily active users, and then they went down to about 5%. And the case asks, what went wrong? And so let me tell you a little bit about what are some of the things that went wrong here. So the first one is, okay, I have a question for you. The first time you used AI, did you suddenly become more productive? The first time, the very first time you put in a prompt, you were suddenly more productive. No way, I don't buy this at all. There is no way the first prompt you wrote, you were like, oh my God, I 10x my productivity. What happened is you put in a prompt, you made a joke, you got a poem sounding like a pirate, and you're like, this is great. It's transformative. But reality is, we have lots of data on this with past technological waves, but there's always a productivity J-curve. So if you look at average performance, typically when you use AI, you pay a price because you have to figure out, the first time you wrote a prompt, it was not a very good prompt. It didn't give you what you wanted. You didn't know how to use this. This is the whole notion of the jagged frontier. You don't know how to actually use AI. And so the first time you use it, you got a little bit worse. The second time you used it, you probably got a little bit more worse because you're like, okay, now I'm going to spend like 5 hours trying to figure out how to actually do this and not do my actual job. But eventually, the hope is that you'll get out of this dip and you end up somewhere better. You end up somewhere with sort of higher productivity. Now, you might be wondering, do I need to have such a big dip? Well, the answer is yes, because if you don't put in that big dip, you don't actually learn how to use this technology, and you fall into what we call the modesty trap, which is you use AI a little bit, you don't lose anything, because you still, maybe it's like 5 minutes here and there, but you don't actually end up anywhere that's that much better than you were before. So that's the modesty trap. The second thing, and this is really logical for why lots of the amazing sales professionals at Microsoft were not using this, is what we call the competency trap, which is if you're a top performer, when you use these tools, especially in the early days, you may be worse off than you were without them. Because if you are a top performer, you know all the shortcuts, you know what you're doing, you know how to get your work done really efficiently. And if these tools are not absolutely exceptional, you may actually be worse off. Now, there are things the company can do. So let me clean up this picture. There's basically 3 things that impact how this curve looks like. Of course, the first one, and we talked about it, is the people, which is how much energy are you going to actually invest in it. The second thing, though, and I'll dig into this in a moment, is the process, which is what is the process and how do they actually deploy this technology? How do they train? I'll talk in more detail of how to actually successfully do this in a second. The third one, and this is the one that you probably have the least control over, is actually the product. Because at the end of the day, the product, the quality of the product and the quality of the AI, the quality of the integration, essentially determines how much better the average employee can be. And so if it's a terrible product, of course it's not going to be that good. If it's an amazing product, then yes, you can actually get some of the benefits. So let me talk a little bit about the process and what went wrong at Microsoft. Now, Microsoft has a long history of driving adoption for whatever technology they've deployed, right? If you look at them, they're always pushing new things to their employees. Their employees are used to using new technologies. But when it came to generative AI, the big aha is you can't start off with adoption. Adoption is actually the second phase. There's this phase before that, which is experimentation. Remember I told you this generative AI is this general purpose technology that can do lots and lots of things, but you need time to figure out what are those things, right? So there's a whole phase of experimentation. Then you have the adoption, and then after the adoption, you get to the absorption. So let me take each of those phases in turn and just tell you a little bit about how to successfully navigate it, and essentially why you need it. So the experimentation phase is really important because AI has a jagged frontier. For tasks that people deem the same level of challenging, AI is sometimes really good at them, and then other times it's absolutely terrible at them. I'll give you an example. I have a new article that's coming out in the Harvard Data Science Review, and they gave me a long list of things to edit in my bibliography. And I looked at that long list of things, and I was like, yeah, AI can absolutely do this. And so I went to my favorite free models. I went to Manus, I went to Claude, I went to ChatGPT. I uploaded that, and I gave my bibliography, gave it the suggestions of what to change. It's like, this will take me, about an hour to do it myself. They started working, and at the end, everything was wrong. This was yesterday. And then I kept pushing it, and then I could not get it to work. because this was a task that is outside of the frontier. It's a subtle, sophisticated task that actually requires human intelligence to go in and actually fix it. And this is exactly the same with most of your work. Your role right now is not how do I use AI, but it's really about how do I manage intelligence, both my own intelligence, so human intelligence, or the people who work for you, but also the artificial intelligence. And where do I distribute that work? And this is what experimentation is about. It's about figuring out what are the places where AI truly adds value. And it turns out not every person in your organization is good at that. And so it's not surprising that in the early days when you deploy this technology, not everyone uses it. It's only a subset of people who experiment and find those valuable use cases. Okay, once you have those valuable use cases though, it turns out you need to try to drive adoption. You need to get everyone else to use it. The funny thing though is the people who probably are really good at experimentation, they're not the people who are going to drive adoption in your organization, right? Typically, the people who experiment tend to be a little bit younger, are willing to just mess around with things. But then the people who actually are going to drive adoption are the people who have the most social capital in the organization, the people who have been there for a long time. So what Microsoft did is after they identified the people who are really good at experimenting and finding those killer use cases, they partnered them with their lowest AI usage people to basically act as like reviewers and screeners. Because if that young kid who's using AI can convince someone who's not actually really into AI to use it for a specific application, that application is amazing, and everyone else around them are going to adopt, right? And so, again, through that, they found a number of killer use cases. For Microsoft, it turned out to be the Teams meeting recap, which is once you've had your meeting, you could write your notes. And so when these sales professionals were going out and meeting with clients, they usually spend a lot of time basically going back and typing up notes, and this automated the whole process. Now, I do want to mention there are sort of two key dimensions, and this comes out of many people's research. Sidao Neely, who you'll see this afternoon, speaks a lot about this. The two dimensions are sort of the hearts and minds, or sort of the capabilities and the feelings of people, which is, if you look at most of your organization, you have folks who have the technical capabilities, and then you have folks who have the mindset, like they're willing to actually do it. And if you map it out, and this is HBS, and you've taken all of our courses, there's always a 2x2. So I had to show you at least one 2x2, but so I wouldn't otherwise be doing my job. But you can sort of see this, that you have the people who have negative feelings and low capabilities. These are your novices. And then you have the people who have high capabilities and have very strong positive feeling. These are your champions. It turns out the people who are the hardest to deal with are the people who have the high capabilities, but no willingness to actually use this technology, because they're the ones that are going to try to shut down their initiatives. And so if you're thinking about how do I navigate my novices to champions, well, first get them excited, get them to play around with this technology without focusing too much on the productivity gains at first. Then once they have the capabilities, then start to sort of really push them into this champion where they can actually start to use this and integrate it into their work. Now, when they did this, you can see the adoption sort of went up all the way to sort of 70, 80% became daily active users. Now, this is adoption. And you probably noticed that in my growing gap picture, I said absorption. Absorption is different from adoption. Adoption is just, I go out and I use AI and I keep all of my work processes exactly the same. Absorption, on the other hand, is I reimagine my processes and I reimagine my work and my organization with AI at the center of it. It is much harder to do this, but this is where the real value add is. And just sort of two questions to ask yourself, right, is one, are you just retrofitting AI? Or are you just treating AI as just another tool? And hopefully by asking yourself these questions, you can get a little bit of retrospective in your organization and see how things are looking. Now, the analogy, if you like pictures, I love pictures, is just to look at the map of Boston and Manhattan. This is the street map. So Boston was never designed for cars. I'm sure some of you have driven in Boston. It is not easy to drive. You can see all of our roads are basically going in all sorts of directions. But if you look at Manhattan, Manhattan was redesigned so that all of the streets basically are perfectly aligned. And this is essentially what you need to do with your organization. If you look at your organization and all of your work processes, they probably look like Boston. And so you need to figure out how can you demolish that and build some beautiful highlands. And now the question is, okay, if I do that, what does it look like when I actually get to the frontier? What is a frontier organization that is actually following this curve? What does it actually look like? So to tell you about this, I'll speak about another case, and this, again, is going to be part of the new HBSO course that I keep promising you. So this is a fantastic company. They're called Woz, based in France. What they do, they were started about 10 years ago. So actually exactly at the time you run the first conference here is when they started. And what they do is they basically sell matching software for projects to people. So think of Capgemini as like one of their key customers. Essentially, every single time there's a consulting project, that project needs to be staffed, and their software takes the requirements, takes all of the people in the company, and matches that. So very traditional SaaS business. The thing that's not traditional is a few years ago, way before Claude Code or any of that stuff came out, they started building what they call Code A. I don't know why this is so low resolution. Actually, I do know because it's a screenshot from the case. So it probably just wasn't very high resolution. But basically, Code A is, think of it as like OpenClaw or any other agentic orchestration platform. What it allows it to do is it allows the developer or actually any employee to interact with vertical agents and tools without ever having to go there. And in addition to that, it has memory, it has thinking pattern, it has internal context, and of course it has access to LLMs, which are the brain. And so the vision in this company, and they've actually built this, so it's not just a vision, is that workers should never have to do their work outside of their agentic tool. So one tool, it has access to everything else under the hood. It goes out and executes the work on their behalf. And not only can it nudge other AI agents, but it can go and actually pass work on to other people. And so they have built what we call like an agentic operating model, where humans direct the work, and then the work gets executed by AI agents. Now, you might be thinking, oh, this is some tiny startup, you know, I can't do this in my large enterprise. Actually, just to tell you the impact as well, basically back of the envelope calculations across the company, you're looking at about 50-ish% improvements in productivity, not just in software engineering, but pretty much everywhere else. And just two anecdotes, and we interviewed a lot of people and sort of asked them what was their work like before and after, and two things sort of really stood out to me. One was this lady who was basically in charge of all of the documentation that gets released every single time they ship a new product. And the way she described it was that because of this tool, she was able to go from being like a content creator, like she's the one writing all of the documents, to being a content manager, where AI is writing the documents, she's figuring out the narrative, editing it, et cetera. And so it really allowed her to upskill herself. And what's really interesting is, in the past, they would just do a single release note, but because of AI, she was able to personalize it to every one of their customers to say, hey, you had these tickets, here is how we addressed it for you. Like, this is what we've done for you. And so she completely changed her role. The second one was, we spoke to one of the software engineers, and what he said was, and it was really fascinating, basically these tools allowed him to go from being reactive to being proactive. And so in the past, the way they would operate is they would come in a ticket, there would be a bug, something would be broken, and they would basically spend their whole time just putting out fires and fixing things. Because now they were sort of 50% more productive, they were able to complete their work much quicker, it allowed them to think a little bit about, well, what do our customers actually want? And let me be more proactive instead of just reacting when something comes to me. Let me actually think about how I can evolve the project. And then coming back to this point, I said, okay, you might be thinking, yeah, this is just a startup. Well, JP Morgan, I think some of you said you took the AI course, you probably heard from Mary Erzos. JP Morgan has actually built the exact same architecture inside their organization called Connect Coach. Basically, if you draw it out, it looks exactly like this. And so if JP Morgan in this highly regulated environment is able to pull this type of architecture off, then actually anyone can do it. Well, not everyone has 20 billion to spend on tech, but you see what I mean. Like this is open source. You can download, you can start using it. And so the big transition, of course, is most organizations that are trying to catch up, they're treating AI as an assistant. They haven't moved to this agentic operating model where you, the people, are directing many, many agents, and those agents are going out there and actually doing the work. And of course, there's lots of positive things to say about this. It helped break silos. It allowed for continual context. It really it changes how organizations actually learn because it allows you to codify a lot of the tacit knowledge that sort of sits in people's brains, gets captured and written down in the organization. And so I'm basically done. I just want to leave you with this question, which is like, should you wait or should you lead? I get this question all of the time, right? Every time there's a new technology, you have the early adopters, and then you have the first movers. I think with AI, that's not the right question. The right question is whether your organization is going to be transformed by AI. That definitely is going to happen. The right question is, will you lead that transformation, or is it going to be actually imposed on you? Because if I come back to the growing gap, fine, I can't tell you exactly where AI is going to go. But if you do not do anything and you continue as you are, then the gap is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And so the goal is right now, how can you not just one steepen that curve, but how can you sort of continuously keep trying to improve so that you get closer and closer to the frontier? And this is literally, this graph is the motivation for this whole new course that we're building because, as Patrick said, our hope is not to just educate leaders, but to educate leaders all across the world. And just to leave you with two final thoughts, Gen AI is fundamentally catalyzing whole new business and operating models. And really every person needs to prepare and embrace this technology because this isn't just a fad or a hype. This is really what is going to drive us into the future. Okay, thank you all so much. I have some time for questions? Great. I've got some time for questions right there. Okay, I've never seen a hand shoot up quicker. So someone's going to bring you a mic. So we'll do one here, and then let me get a second person prep. So we'll go over here second, and then we'll do a third person right there. Okay, so close. Go for it.
Should we argue or not argue with AI?
It's a great question. You should interrogate your AI and you should push it. But the one thing to be aware of is that these models have the illusion of transparency, which is when you ask it and say, hey, why did you tell me that? It tells you very convincingly why it told you that, but that is not grounded in truth. And so you should argue, you should push it in exactly the same way that you push your junior employees, but just be aware that they don't always tell you the truth.
How do you get them out of that loop?
Yeah, it's really hard. The way to actually get it is for you to know what the outcome should look like. This is why I kept saying this domain expertise is so important because there's basically three things that determine the quality of AI's output. One is the inputs, the direction you give it, so the prompt or whatever. The second one is the data you give it and the systems you let it interact with. And then the third one is the evaluation, which is your ability to tell if this is good or bad and then fix it. And I think a lot of people have this misconception that human plus AI is necessarily better than human or AI, right? If I tell you that, you're like, yeah, humans with AI are definitely better. That's not true because for humans plus AI to be better, you need the humans to overrule the AI when the AI is wrong, right? Otherwise, you're just as good as the AI. You're not adding any value. And so, yes, you should argue with your AI, but you should, when it comes to work, I mean, let's use AI to have fun and like I generate images, songs, I don't know nothing about music, that doesn't matter. But in your work where it really matters, you are the expert, and so you should make sure that AI meets your bar. Because you're still responsible for the work. Yes. Go here. Yes. And then we'll go right there.
Thank you so much. I've been an early adopter, I've been a champion, but I also fall in the 2x2's resistor because a lot of decision making still leans on the bias that the data that we already have, right? Like, so we see there's misogyny, there's like selective biases. So if all of us in this room were to take meaningful decisions, what are the 3 things we should be wary of when we're using this data?
That's a great question. And this is why I always think about it as it's not just go and use AI for absolutely everything. It's about thinking, how do you allocate your intelligence, right? Which are the tasks that AI can help you with, which are the tasks you should be using AI for, and then which are the tasks that you should be using your brain for. I think the biggest, I'll just give you one. I think the biggest failure that I see time and time again is just people falling asleep at the wheel. Because it's so easy, and by the way, there's actually research that shows this, which is AI, even when it's wrong, can sound so compelling and so convincing that you're like, yeah, this is great, but it's like wrong, right? And so it's sort of making you a better bullshitter if you're not careful. And so to me, that's the #1 failure point, is just falling asleep at the wheel and just letting AI do its thing, and I'm sure you've all encountered this sort of that notion of AI slop, right? Where someone sends you this long document, you look through it, and it finishes with, what can I help you with next? And you're like, yeah, you copy pasted that. You didn't think about it. And just coming back to this point that I was saying earlier, which is, and this is the culture you need to build in your organization. It's not AI did this, it's you did this. You're on the hook, you're responsible for it. And so as long as you have that mindset, and I think the biggest culprits of this are probably our most junior colleagues who don't have the experience. But you just need to maintain that really high standard, and you need to argue and interrogate your AI. You need to evaluate it and make sure that it is giving you the output that you truly care about. Yeah, thank you.
Are there specific areas in an organization that you think AI should not be used?
No, I think you can use it. It's the jagged frontier. It's not about specific parts of the organization. It's about specific tasks. And it's about figuring out, I can't tell you in your organization where to use it and not use it. It's really up to you to use your judgment. That's why I keep saying allocate intelligence, human and artificial. Don't just say artificial for everything. You actually need a balance of the two. Yes, right there, we have the mic. And then we'll go, maybe somewhere, we'll go to the back over there after this, but yes.
Okay, so what's your thoughts, the impact of AI on teams? So what I'm observing in my organization itself, before, like, we were always used to say the teamwork, but now suddenly we started our strategy towards a one human agent, and then the person has 10 different AI agents and working with that.
Yeah.
So, but it's like kind of eliminating the need of teams rather than individuals.
So my colleagues actually did a really large study in this at P&G. They had individuals with and without AI and teams with and without AI. And the task was basically an innovation task. Who do you think came up with the best ideas?
Yeah.
Teams with AI. Teams with AI. And so I think the trouble is, right now, the way the technology is architected, it's very much me and my AI. It's not really built in this collaborative way, right? Like, we can't open and speak to ChatGPT at the same time. I think over the next 6 to 12 months, and you're already seeing examples of this, it's going to be brought in much more as a teammate in a much more collaborative environment. And so I think you should be very wary of having an organization that is basically replacing teamwork with me working with my AI, because we now have a fair bit of evidence that says teams of people with AI are the ones that actually do the best job. And it's really painful, by the way. And I do these exercises, but just something very practical you can do is, when you have a team working together, you should have in the meeting or in Zoom or wherever you are, like, have one person screen share and have that person work on with their assistant and have the whole team sort of participate in that conversation, right? And what's really interesting is, for one, is you actually learn that people interact with their AI systems very, very differently. But two, you get an abundance of ideas and ways that you can actually sort of elevate the conversation there. Great. So let's go. I think you have a mic right there. And this guy here has been like waving his hand like I've never seen anything like it. So we'll go to you in a second.
So my name is Sally, and I first wanted to start out by thanking you. What an incredible lecture and eye-opening information that you've provided today. So I am a founder, and I'm building at the intersection of nervous system regulation as well as well-being, which is an AI-enabled neurotech company. And my questions mainly are about regulations and ethics, as mental health is very, research-focused and science-focused.
Yeah.
My first question to you is current FDA oversight equipped to handle adaptive AI systems that learn post-deployment?
No.
The expected response.
Okay, look, so they have approved traditional machine learning models. It usually is a conversation between the person building the ML model and sort of the people regulating it. But I do think more broadly, AI is kind of like a drug. Like, we need to figure out how to use it. It's not necessarily safe. We need to figure out the dose. This technology is moving so quickly, and more broadly, not just the FDA, but most regulators are really struggling because they don't actually understand the technology. They don't understand how to use it. And I do have a worry that we're going to see the same thing that we saw with social media, where Mark Zuckerberg is testifying in front of Congress saying, I'm so sorry, I had no idea that these things could happen, right? We can see Sam Altman doing the same thing. I'm so sorry, I had no idea that it would blow up. But this is kind of, it's a really hard thing to balance because it is an incredible technology. It's so powerful, but of course there's huge risks. We heard about falling asleep at the wheel, et cetera. And the regulators, they just don't have the expertise right now, the way I see it, to really go out there and regulate this. And then I think Europe has tried to do it, but I think they've gone a little bit too far, and it's kind of stifling innovation in Europe right now. If you look at it, there is basically one model builder, and they're far from being a frontier company right now in Europe, which is really disappointing because it means the whole EU is starting to fall behind compared to where the US is and compared to China, which is like, we haven't even talked about what's happening in China. It's incredible, the pace of adoption. They have these crazy open claw events where they're coming together and actually getting everyone to build their own claws, et cetera. So I think this is one of those things where the cost of falling behind is really great, and so that is going to be a challenge for regulators, but I do think we need to push and keep innovating. But this is why it's so important that all of us as leaders, we're not going to get regulation in the US on this anytime soon, but all of us as leaders need to have our principles around AI and how we're going to use it, and then we need to have very clear frameworks of how our organizations should go out and use it.
Thank you for your response. And my second question is, should AI tools be used in crisis intervention, or is that too high of a stake for automation?
I think the question is not should we use it here, it's more what's the alternative, right? Which is, like, there's great examples. Let's look at the US. I'll talk about healthcare, right? The US, there's lots of issues with healthcare, but broadly speaking, there is some level of availability. And so the bar you place on AI doctors or diagnosis rightfully should be extremely high because you have a comparison of sort of the human. But if you go to rural place in Africa where there isn't a single doctor around, then there, yeah, like actually giving you, and I have a friend who's running an experiment on this, which is going into rural Africa and across several countries. I can't remember which countries off the top of my head, but basically placing AI doctors to do diagnosis. The comparison is nothing, and so there, like, yeah, go use it. Over here in the US or maybe in Europe where it's more broadly available, maybe the bar is a little bit high. So I don't think this is a simple black or white. I think there's a lot of nuances and a lot of gray areas.
Thank you for your time and feedback.
My deepest apologies. Okay.
No, it's not your fault. It's not your fault at all.
Come down, I'll answer your question, sir.
All right, please help me thank Yav for the wonderful talk. You're just too popular is the problem. Okay, we're going to, one quick comment. I've seen this comment that Yav put up there. I think Kareem Lakhani has said it as well about the idea that AI is the worst it'll ever be today. I often think of that as a great motto for you as a human being, right? Let's hope that the worst version of you, that sounds weird to say. Let's hope you get better every day. And part of getting better is being at things like this, which leads me to what I need you to do next, which is to briskly take a break and then walk over to Aldrich Hall, which is as you walk out the doors diagonally across the quad for your case discussions, which will start promptly at 10:30, correct? So you got 15 minutes to do this. Thank you, everybody.
My pleasure.